This is what a canopy looks like before it's being readied for shipment. Thought I'd walk you through some of the parts, but first of all, I wanted you to see how I rolled the fabric up. There's about 4 or 5 canopy. There's some yellow and green in here, and this is how I take it to and from the seamstress in this tube, because it's a very difficult material to handle in just a wadded up form. That'll be folded up when it's shipped. It could probably fit in your shirt pocket. Anyway, I thought you might like to see that. The shipment will be in a 6x6, actually outside 7x7 telescoping tube. It'll end up being 73 inches long, and that's for these 6-foot long rods. And it ships pretty safely. Going down a parts list, you've got the fabric. In this case, it's the yellow canopy pattern, and the customer wanted all the little pockets cut out, so they're cut out and ready to go. And we'll string that on the rods here up a bit. After the fabric, we've got the 2 main rods. They're 6 feet long, and on one end, you'll notice that there's a hole drilled. Hope you can see it. A hole drilled for a roll pin to go through. The other end is wild, shall we say, and I'd like to see the caps kept on here as much as possible while we're slipping the fabric on it. We'll have to take these off to put the rubber fittings on, but when you're slipping the fabric over this, if you don't have these little vinyl caps on, the glass fibers will actually penetrate into the canopy fabric. So try to keep your caps on. The front accessory bar is the short of the 2, and the rear accessory bar obviously is the longest of the 2. Now you'll notice that the holes are on an angle. The narrowest part of the angle goes towards the front or back. So I'm holding the bar, if you can see that hole through there. This is the front, but if I square it off, you'll see that that way the tension, if we go over here to the canopy on the trike, the tension is outward and stretches this fabric. So the rods will make a V pattern when we start assembly. So you get your front and rear accessory bars. You've got the 2 wooden rods, or your tensioning rods. They will go inside this fabric pocket, front and rear. The V block, which already has a lot of components on it, has your reflectors are installed. It has the set screws in the back, so that's assembled. I'm going to send this out as an assembly, and this will plug in to the rods after we've gotten the fabric on it. And in this case, the customer wanted specified the vinyl cap to go on the front. I'm going to actually send an extra one here as well. They're not that expensive, and it's a long way. This part's going all the way across country, so we'll make sure we had enough extra parts to begin with. That includes your front down rods, your rubber connector sleeve. These are your connector sleeves up here. It has the snap hook on the front, the trigger snap. There's roll pins in here. If I can push this back with one hand, and I probably can't, well I can. If I do it like this, and you'll see that there's a roll pin in here. There's actually a roll pin in all of these locations, and there's extra roll pins in one of these bags. There it is. There's extra roll pins in here when this connector goes on to the long rods. So I'll leave that off for a minute. This is a telescoping front down rod assembly, and the customer actually wanted that adjustment, and there's another pin in here holding that underneath this vinyl cap. or underneath this vinyl sleeve, you can see, I don't know if you can see that, well, you can see that, I can see it's shining. I hope you can too. Anyway, there's a pin in there, and this little vinyl sleeve will keep that pin where it needs to be. And I've talked to the customer, and he's pleased with that, so that's what we're going to do. So we've got the down rod assembly, the T-nut bag, where'd he go? Yeah, the T-nut, and there's an oval keyway, I guess you could call it, in the bag there. We stopped off looking for the these little tubes here. These are actually main rod stiffeners, and if we go around here to the finished trike, you'll see, probably just from a reflection, this is an extra tube put on this rod back here to give it some stiffness back here in this back section. Because what I'd like to see is, I'd like to see this rod rise up out of the V-block, rise up before it starts making this arc. So these will be sent to the customer, and I'll be talking to the customer, and we can make some decisions on which lengths to use, if at all. It's going to depend on the setup that the customer has on his trike. A Velcro patch, there's 7 2x4 patches in here. The fabric has not been marked yet. I'm going to actually put it on the rods, and then I'll take a wooden template and mark where the patches go. And again, I've already talked to the customer. I'm going to leave this the front patch off, this patch here. I'm going to leave the marking of that one off because it's directly above the one below, which I will mark. The reason I'm leaving this top one off is I've got some vinyl graphics I'm going to play with, actually, up here, that would go on this front area. But I will mark the location for the back Velcro, because I think this is a nice area for embroidered patches and so forth. The rubber fittings, and there's a bunch of them. This is kind of what, there's actually vinyl caps in here as well. I put them all in a common bag, but essentially these are the rubber fittings that will go on when we actually thread this fabric up here. If we don't put the vinyl fittings on now, you have to take the fabric all the way back off. So I've made the fitting package an option so that you can go ahead and put it on, even though you may not have the gear rack option or even the visor or teether rod down here. But if you put the fittings on when you're threading the fabric on, it just saves a whole lot of work later on, and you can always add these other accessories even a year from now. So we got the visor package. You got a right and left visor. There's a little strap here that the rod will go through. Little straps here will help hold it up into the overhead on the accessory bar. You do need the accessory bar to strap that thing back up into the overhead. The teether rod is essentially this long rod here. It's fiberglass. It'll stretch from side to side. 2 of these little vinyl caps will go on the ends, and this would then be what this will be hanging off of. Okay? It's real easy to put in and out, so I'm not even concerned about that at the moment. It's something that's pretty straightforward. The last option is the gear rack package, and it consists of a front and rear tube that goes across the trike. This is actually threaded inside, these fiberglass tubes, and then these 3 rods will go front to back using some of the fittings. Oh, I'm sorry, where's my fitting package? Oh, they're in here. These little fittings here go on the rods. There will be 6 of these little ones hiding back in here. So there's 6 of these fittings here that will go topside, as seen here. Now, when you're assembling this, and I'm not going to do this today, but after the fabric's been assembled, these little standoffs, the rubber fitting package, there's a long, I believe it's an 8mm screw that is in this package. These 4 longest screws will go through this standoff rubber fitting and into the end of these fiberglass tubes. So you want to put your front and rear fiberglass tubes on first. Well, actually, put these fittings on, but put the tubes across here first before you put your front to back rods on. You will have to have these fittings on there, obviously. And the only thing that holds this whole assembly on are these 4 set screws. And by the way, all the fasteners that you'll need to get to, the ones in the ends of these accessory bars, the ones at the ends of the gear rack tubes, cross tubes, they're all metric. In fact, the only tools we need to erect this whole top is that right there. I believe it's 4mm Allen wrench. And the only other thing besides that we're going to need is some soap to make the fittings slide on the rods. Do not use an oil-based product because the rubber fittings won't be tight enough after they're on there. So it's pretty much the package. I'm going to get to this template in a little bit. This is the template that I've been using since 2012 on all my tops. They've all been cut out of this with this same pattern. The Velcro patches, you can see, have changed just a little bit. The ones in the side here for the visors, obviously these visor Velcro patches need to be in a pretty standard form in order for the visor to work next to your head. So that's the reason behind the pattern. It's a real easy pattern to use. It's exactly you know, a mirror image. There's no oddity to the size. That is the Canopy, and that is basically all of the options that actually fit to the top. I'm working on, in fact, I've got a brand new front attachment that has not even been on a trike yet, but I'm really excited about it, and it will be retrofittable to trikes that are already out there. So that's what a Canopy looks like in pieces, bunches of pieces. I think there's 105 or 107 pieces there, some of which are already put together. For instance, on this front down rod assembly. Let's put one together. Let me know if there's anybody out there wanting any Canadian geese. I've got a yard full of them back there. The first thing I want to do is get used to identifying the front. Again, the rods will have a hole near the front edge of the fiberglass rods. So when you find your front accessory bar, again, it'll be the shortest one. The holes will be on an angle, not much of one, but on an angle. And what I'd like for you to do is orient that bar. There's no, you can turn it either way you want to in this fashion, but just make certain that when the rods go through here, you can see that they are going out when they start approaching the rear. So we're going to make this large V, not a very big V. It's large in this fashion, but not necessarily here. And that's how you start. Again, there's no top or bottom. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our front down rod assembly that's already been pinned, and before we can put this on here, we need to find out where these little holes that are in the ends of the rubber tubing here, we're going to have to find this hole. So what I'd like for you to do I use enough tape to where I've got probably half a dozen of these real heavy dispensers. Is get you a piece of tape of some kind and line up the hole that's in the tubing with the hole in the rod, and then go back on the rod and put a piece of tape back here. And do that to both rods. That's going to be that side, this is going to be this side, in case there's any difference at all. This is always fun. And these rods too, you'll notice that they can turn. So once this is in there, I can show you how we can play with the rotation of things. Now what I want to do is I want to mark where that hole is with a little line across the top on both these rods. They're real tight in the rubber, but they're fairly loose in the rod. So let's see how close we can get. And I can look through this rod. I can tell when this tubing is straight up and down because I can see all the way through, and I can see through the rod, of course. So I'm going to try. Let's see how close I am. Oh, I can see daylight in there. And I put these little pins, these little roll pins out to where they'd be handy. And if I can find the hole again. I can tell you right now, this is going to require some patience. I like to use a block of wood on this, and if you will, kind of push gently and see if that pin will find that hole. And it is very rare. I did find it. And I'll get the camera over here so you can really see this. This is a fairly important step, because if you ever have to take your assembly apart, okay, I hope you can see this. So what I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to try to take and push this down, but I can see that it's a little bit tilted, so now I'm going to push this back a little bit to see if I can straighten that pin up. Okay, it's a little bit straighter, and it's fairly well lined up still. So let's see if we can push it all the way through. And again, I like to use wood on this. It's wanting to go. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to pin the other side before I turn it over. Okay, I hope everybody can see what I'm doing here. Okay, I've got the hole in this piece plumb. I'm going to grab the rod back here where I'm not going to push that on. Here's my mark. And again, I can see daylight, I think, through there. Let's see how well I did. Not close enough. I'm not doing very well on this one. And sometimes it takes several stabs at it, for sure. And I think what I might do is just turn the rod over. I don't know what that's going to do to your view. I'll try to do my best to keep this in front of the camera and see if it's any closer on this side. Doesn't feel like it. And if it doesn't want to go in, it feels close. It doesn't take much misalignment for that to not go. Alright, let's take the rod back out. Let's turn it around here. Oh, there it goes. Now, I didn't push all the way down. I wanted to look and see how that pin is straight up and down. It looked like if I push this tubing further, it'll straighten that pin up just a little bit. And let's see if we can push it through. Not quite through. Difficult trying to keep that camera in the same place. And in fact, it looked like well, this was the other one I did not finish installing, and now it is finished. Okay, and it should feel fairly smooth across there. At this point in time, you're done with the tape. If that camera is not set up properly, I'm real sorry about that. This is probably that was probably one of the trickiest parts of the top. And what I want to do, I want to pull these up tight like that. Now the set screws are already in this particular rod, so I'm going to take my little wrench and I'll work on this side first. When you get your assembly, there may not be these little plastic plugs already in the tubing. You want to use the shortest of these set screws, and this little plastic plug will go inside that hole. Now you can see how long that screw is. These are the shorter of the two that you'll have. You don't want this to be all the way in there. You do not want to put metal against these rods, or you'll damage the fiberglass threads and the strands, and they'll start separating. So just make certain that this is not tied up against the fiberglass rod without this being between the set screw and the rod. Now, how can I tell? Well, on this one here, it's in that far. You can see, maybe you can't, I can tell that that little plug is in there. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up. But now I want to make sure this accessory bar is really jammed up tight against this connector tubing. One side. And again, I want to see how, okay, I'm in that far, yeah. Let me just snug it up here a little bit. Oh yeah, right there. It's tight. And there is a plug inside that. If I suspected there wasn't, I wouldn't tighten this up. Okay, we'll pull this back real tight. And that's really the entire front of the canopy. So now we've got to start putting on the fabric. The fabric will have a narrow side and a wider side. The narrow side goes to the front. If you've already picked out a top and a bottom to this, the orientation would likely be from this trigger on the snap hook. If your snap hook is already on the down rods, I usually prefer the trigger on the bottom. By trigger, I mean that little thing, that little trigger. I usually like to see that on the bottom, which would mean this is going to be our top. Okay, if this is the top, and when we start putting our fabric on, we want to put the bottom side will have where the fabric is joined together, and the top will be nice and smooth. So this will be our top. We've already determined because of the snap hook orientation, and we could take this off and redo that, but this is going to be our top. So let's put this on. I'm going to bring these tubes way around here so you can see what I'm doing. I normally would keep it all up on the table, but I'm trying to keep things where the camera can see it. We have to stop here because now it's time to start putting on some fittings. Now we've already determined that this is our top. The first fitting I'd like for you to put on is just these two, and there's only two different kinds of fittings here. So we've got 6 of these fittings, and you'll notice that on one side the holes are larger, the way this was made. But what we want to do, and the holes are different size as well. One hole will be quite large, and one hole will be smaller. We want the smaller one at the moment. And what I'd like to do, because we're going to be pushing these fittings on this way, select the largest side, largest hole on this side. Actually, the holes are the same size, but this will slide on easier in this direction. So we're going to pull these rubber caps off for the moment. One of these on each side. Again, I'm paying close attention to the smallest hole of these two, but the largest side of the small hole. If that makes sense. And before I go any further, what we're going to do next, we're going to get some soap. Now, I've already taken, this is just hand soap. I've already taken and put a little bit in this cap here, and it will not take much. But I want to put a little bit in front of that fitting and a little bit in front of the fitting coming up. And the next fitting will be the same set. So we're going to have 2 identical fittings up front. Again, the smallest hole, but the largest side. And it will fit tight here. If you pick the wrong hole or the wrong hole in this, it would slide on too easily. Smallest hole, largest side. And after we've gotten this slid up just a little bit, we want to put the sleeve pocket, put these vinyl caps back on to keep the glass fibers from eating into the fabric. And we want to thread this on . Yes, it will take you some time to do this. And the only advice I have is just take your time and enjoy it. I may at some point in time try to ship the Canopy without the front and rear accessory bar on. Okay, once this is on there to where it will stay, it will be easier to work like that. Okay. You still see what I'm doing here? That's not one to slide very well over here. Yeah. So soap. Nothing oily, just soap. And you want to try to slide them both together, because if you push one and the fabric slides up and jams up against the rear one, you may start ripping this fabric or ripping some of the hemming out. So you don't want to do that. So try to keep them together and just feed it up. That's going up a little bit. I think this rod was a little bit smaller. And by the way, these rods will differ in size just a little bit, and that's the case. This is a little smaller rod. So, and they do vary. Okay, I'm going to shut the camera off and get to the next set. Okay, after you've gotten it far enough along to where the rod is just about to come back into this second and last pocket, pull your rubber caps back off. And again, put the standard standoff on first. Small hole, largest end. You can actually use these kind of as a handle if you're careful enough. And just give it a little bit of twist and shout. A little soap. Front side, back side. Now, this is the bottom of the can. I won't turn this up so we've got the top up. Okay, so this is the top of the canopy. When you put these pieces here on, I want the angles. You can see the rod will go through the side hole here. This other hole is a blind hole. I want these knobs to be on top and this angled piece going forward. So it'll look like this. Okay. So now we're going to take and start this process all over again. We'll get these up here just a little bit. We'll put my cap back on again so it doesn't tear into the fibers don't tear into the fabric. Lace this on. And you see we're at the back here already. So okay, I'm going to turn the camera off. You can see how we're progressing until I get this all the way up to the front. Is it a long way down there? You betcha. That's what it should look like at this point. I want you to see some of the action here, because you can actually use these two pairs. I can grip this one and kind of hold it still and twist and pull. And again, you want to kind of keep this fabric coming at you. You don't want it to. And then I can go back and bring this one to me. See how that works, even on this tight rod over here. Now I've got something to help me. Now I don't want to go too much further than say, oh, no, it's not quite two, it's about 20 inches back here. I'm going to stop this back set and continue with the front. Let's see how close to the leading edge I can get. I'm getting real close up here to the front. You'll notice the fabric starting to get tighter up here. But you want to make sure that these are close enough together to where when I continue to pull on this, you don't rip this pocket out back here. So and it will get real tight up here. At this point, you do not want to bring these any further forward. We're far enough along. Now we want to put our rods in up here, our tensioning rods. The shortest one will go across the front, and we want to lace this in. Can you see what I'm doing? Kind of. We want to lace this in through the pockets and incorporate this rubber, not a rubber band, a rubber sleeve. Now be careful with this wood because it will break. Is this fun to do? It sure is. Quite rewarding after it's done. I could take the other rod and put in there to kind of help me get started, but you can see how this goes. And you can see the rubber here keeps sliding it back so the rod can advance. I'm going to try something while we're on the camera. Let's try putting this in first where there's no tension on it. To open up that pocket, I'll get some help here. Some cheap help. Trust me, it'll be worth it. I almost would like everyone to put their own canopy together, just so you'll know what has gone into this. When I first started making the canopies, I didn't have anything to stretch the fabric in the front and back, and it was really quite limp. And just kind of center that best you can. And at this point, if you'll take and put the little straps kind of in the middle part of that pocket. Now we're going to go backwards with our fabric, and I'd like to see some stretch here. This will also be a nice place to clamp lights or cameras or whatever you have. So now we're going to go backwards all the way to the back. I'll leave the camera on for a little bit. When you get to a point where the pocket starts appearing here, just kind of center these best you can. You can see that it's starting to get tight. I'm going to do it to both of you. Flip this over and do the other side. Here, work on this pair a little bit. together right there. We'll straighten that up. I'm really excited for you to get a canopy. Okay, I think we're close enough at this point. I'm going to turn the assembly around here so we can get an idea of what I'm going to do next. And we'll take the rear accessory bar. And again, I want to keep these rods to where they're putting sideways tension on it. And pull these little vinyl caps off. Put that one back on. At this point, it really is not that necessary. And you can see I'm already starting to get a lot of tension on this. I'm going to put these back on. I'm starting to get a lot of tension on the sideways. Now if you stand it upright, you can pull up on this rod, and this pull up on the side rods, and this accessory bar will it'll start sliding forward for you. And just ease a little bit at a time up through here. See where we are on our fabric. And we're looking pretty good on our fittings and the placement of them. We're going to advance, if you see what I'm doing, I'm pushing down on the rod and just pushing. And in fact, I almost have to hold this back because it wants to race forward. So to get it up here to where it's close to the fabric, because we've got to once again play with our tensioning rods. I'd say if the fabric is close to touching, we'll be in pretty good shape. And we get to do this again. I really should have done this tomorrow, but it's supposed to rain here. We've had 2 months. This is only I think this is the 3rd day we've seen sunshine in 2 months, so I might be a little bit premature getting out here with this thing. I want to take one of these extra rods through here. That worked out pretty well. Just thread it in here and kind of open that pocket up a little bit. Can you see what I'm doing here? Just kind of opening that pocket up and kind of guiding things through. I mean, I can see a nice pocket for this rod to fit into, so. Yeah. I don't want you to be laughing at me. But I know you are. And that's okay. That was about it. Oh, that was opened so nicely. And it just closed up on me. Again, kind of center the bands. And now I want to start pulling this back a little bit. The same thing, I'm pushing down on this rod back here and starting now to feed the fabric. Check and keep a close eye on where these fittings are. You don't want the fabric to be hanging up on your fittings. Bring it back to where this is stretched a little bit. I'm going to find my 4mm wrench. Go ahead and snug this down. Again, make sure that that plastic plug is in there. It doesn't have to be super tight. And there's our top. We get it upside down. We have our little knobs up on top. These standoffs here. The middle four will be for these in here will be for our tubing, our cross tubing. This one will go back here and will also help keep some tension on the sideways, and that will go forward. So you begin to see this is really, well, let's put the back V-block on. I'm trying to race some time here as well. Now this also has a very short screw in it, and I'm looking down through this hole. And I want to make sure that my little plastic piece is in there, and I can see my little plastic piece. I should tell you, in fact, I'm going to take this out and I'll show you what I did on these back parts, these back screws, because there really wasn't enough room. There wasn't enough room in here for a plastic plug, so I fused a nylon ball with this set screw. So just to so this is a ball back here, not a plug like in the other pieces. So you've got the narrow spacing goes to the bottom, wide spacing to the top. My fabric top side up, so this is how I want to put the base on here. I'm going to move this whole thing down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to pull these caps off here, and you really want to feed this in carefully, because if you pull this out, you're going to start splitting this wood. I can look at the, and you can see there's really an abrupt angle here. This is tricky for sure. There's going to be a lot of bending, but you can grab this and bend it too. So no excuse not to be able to do that. I don't want to hear any whining. And one of the first things you're going to see is that the rods will cross one another. And if I try to put this on a trike right now, these rods may hit the tire, so you're just going to have to bear with me, and we can resolve the length of these rods when you get to that point. Now, if you get this far along, the customer getting this top is going to make his own adapter going into the pannier rack. The keyway here, you can see it needs to be part of that. It's in this bag here. The little oval piece needs to be attached to the pannier permanently. There's a T-nut in here that will go against this, along with the big fat fender washer. So that's really all there is to this. But I mentioned these little tubes here. You saw that putting these rods in here is not really that difficult. These tubes slid over these rods, and you can see these tubes will go on. You see it's on there quite a ways up. These tubes will stiffen this area. I don't know how much stiffening you're going to need until you put this on there, and let's look and see what we're starting with. Really about it. I don't know what else to tell you. This customer's also getting a couple of mirrors. Oh, there is one other thing I wanted to show you. While this fabric is stretched on here, and if I'm shipping this broken down, what I will likely do is not even put these on here. I just stretch the fabric up there because I want to get to the point where I can put this on there and start marking the areas where these patches will go. This is it's fairly straightforward. I told the customer I'd be real careful and put a nice little pencil mark out here because once this fabric is on there and stretched, you want to have that accomplished first before you start putting any kind of patchwork on here. That's really that's about it. If you have no interest in any of the fittings for the top or the patches, I mean, I can even leave the fabric without these pockets, and of course the fabric would just slide on there instantaneously and give you a nice clean look. But there are going to be some add-on things that I've already got on the design table to add to this top. So if you've got this fitting package on here, we can always add other stuff later on, and the pockets cut out. I will say this, the fabric, even though I may not cut the pockets out, I hope to mark where they go, because this is supposed to locate or help locate where the visors are going to be underneath here, okay, on that in these patch areas. So it all there's a plan here, and it's taken about 3 years to get it to this point. Let's go ride.